So, Pop here with this week's Celebrate Recovery character study from the Celebrate Recovery Study Bible. And this week's character study is on Abram. My name is Abram. And what we'll be reading about here comes from Genesis 12:10 through 13:18. If you want to read that along with what I read to you today. Abram, whose name was later changed to Abraham, is elsewhere in the Bible identified as the man of faith, Galatians 3:9. The first 9 verses of Genesis 12 provide powerful validation of Abram's great faith. Despite this, Abram knew fear and anxiety. When faith is shoved aside by fear, we're left to our own strategies for establishing a sense of security. Famine sent Abram on a journey to Egypt. As he approached the land of Pharaoh, he devised a deception that requires his wife Sarai to lie. Abram was willing to surrender his wife to Pharaoh in a ploy to save his own life. For a time, the illusion of control brought comfort, but Abram's scheme seemed to be working. In fact, he grew wealthier on account of Pharaoh's delight in Sarai, Genesis 12:16. But God, who had great plans for Abram, brought Abram's secret into the light, verses 17 through 18. Pharaoh confronted Abram with the predictable results of his trickery and sent him packing, verses 19 through 20. Abram, the man of faith, was rightly rebuked by a pagan king. Our fears can crowd our faith during times of testing, and some people live with a generalized sense of fear all the time. A pervasive cloud of anxiety hovers around them, and their fear continuous is a continuous emotional state. Independent of any clear threat, like Abram, we're tempted to grasp for more and more control over our circumstances. This lust for power often leads people to manipulate those they love, including family members and friends. But controlling behavior leaves no room for faith to operate. Control over our world is ultimately an illusion. Only God is big enough to manage our circumstances. God so loved Abram, and he loves us too much to let us live lives of delusion. At some point, our schemes inevitably fall apart and our secrets are exposed. Abram experienced a painful public exposure of his lies. Out of this mess came a message: relinquish the reins to God. Upon his return to the Promised Land, Abram faced a pressing practical problem. He and Lot had grown so wealthy in herds that they could no longer occupy the same area of grazing land. Chapter 13, verses 5 through 7. God had deeded all of Canaan to Abram, but Abram was now ready to trust God completely. Although Abram had every right to determine which area would be apportioned to Lot, he allowed his nephew to choose. Not surprisingly, Lot selected the best for himself. Faith is tested and proven. Faith that is tested and proven provides fresh perceptive perspective. There we go. On God's goodness. Abram, willing to trust God in his new dilemma, received fresh revelation. God assured him that all the promised land remained in his possession. Chapter 13, verses 14 through 17. Abram's exercise of faith in this situation had its roots in his renewed worship of God. Chapter 13, 3 and 4. God, not Abram, or even Pharaoh, was in charge in Egypt. Forced out of his denial, Abram began a journey of recovery that took him from place to place until he came to Bethel, chapter 13, verse 3, meaning house of God. Significantly, this was the precise location at which Abram had first built an altar. Chapter 13, verse 4. Overcoming fear isn't about finding a new faith. Freedom from fear is exercising faith in the same God we trusted all along, uh, but applying it to a new situation. Significantly, Abram returned to Bethel and called on the name of the Lord. Chapter 13, verse 4. Well, that's this week's character study. Lord willing, we'll be back together again next Wednesday with another. Enjoy your day. God bless and take care.